What can she bring back from Europe, if anything, that will change your mind?
Well, it looks as if there's nothing, and I have to say that quite bluntly, because they pulled the vote the other day because they knew they couldn't get it through. And the vital issue of the backstop is not the whole issue by any matter of means. There is the whole constitutional status of Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom, which lies at the heart of this debate, and this withdrawal agreement as well. There is also the fact that the withdrawal agreement is incompatible with the Withdrawal Act that was passed in June this year, and Conservative colleagues all voted for it. Even Ken Clarke voted for the third reading of it. And the reality is that that is the anchor, and people really need to get their heads on this, because actually the truth is that that is not going to get repealed. So the repeal of the European Communities Act 1972, which includes the entirety of our relationship with the EU and all the laws, regulations, European Court of Justice jurisdiction, the whole lot, was voted through. That is the law of the land. You can't change that with a withdrawal agreement which contradicts it, and that's what's going on.
So you essentially are saying that there's nothing that she can do that will change your mind?
Well, it's not a question of changing my mind. I'd ask the question, does she or anybody else intend to change the Withdrawal Act of 2018, which expressly repeals the European Communities Act 1972 from the 29th of March 2019? And the answer to that is yes. Well, what's the mayhem that follows from that? Because that's the only way they can get this withdrawal agreement through, or even to get it partially accepted, would be if they were actually to stop trying to play around with the European Communities Act 1972, which is what the withdrawal agreement does. And one other thing, on that withdrawal agreement, we are actually going to be in a position in which the laws imposed on this country are going to be imposed by 27 other countries without our even being there, behind closed doors, without a transcript or recording of any description. And those laws are going to be imposed on us. Do people really realise that that is what's going on? And I'm chairman of the European Scrutiny Committee. I know what's going on, and that's what it's all about. And the transitional period, is that actually going to be an indefinite arrangement? There are so many questions. The European Court of Justice, the jurisdiction.
There are a lot of questions, but the fact remains that, those...
Too.
Yes, but they are facts. But the other fact is that you and those like you lost last night in the vote against the Prime Minister.
Well,
it was bad timing, wasn't it? Clearly, nobody would launch this without thinking they would win, and lost you did.
No, actually, that's not the case. There comes a point where you actually have to
voted
take.
For her.
Well, wait a minute. A lot of those people, with great respect to them, were on the payroll. She only got. She actually lost. From 48, they said we couldn't get beyond 48 to put in the letters, to 117. That's a third of the parliamentary party. The payroll, I understand why they would vote with her on this occasion, but it doesn't alter the fact that you can't get the withdrawal agreement through. The substance of the issue is that the withdrawal agreement won't go through. Then there is the DUP. The DUP are never going to accept this backstop arrangement. They can only do a few sort of tweaks and cosmetic changes. They won't be changes, it'll be window dressing. So the bottom line is that she won't have the support of the DUP soon. That is creating a situation in which we won't be able to get any government business through, and that will be all because of intransigence, a refusal to accept the fact that this withdrawal agreement, which they had to pull, will never get through Parliament, and at the same time is inconsistent with the Northern Ireland constitutional status and also the incompatibility with the Withdrawal Act.
Others would say that it's the ERG that's being intransigent, that it's not listening to what the rest of the Conservative Party are saying.
No, because they all voted for the Withdrawal Act itself. If any of them would like to come forward and say, I want to see the Withdrawal Act repealed, then let them come forward and say it. But I don't think you'll find they will. They all voted for it, just as they voted for the notification of Withdrawal Act itself and for the referendum by 6-1, which said that we were going to give the decision to the British people. So come back to the main question. What is this really all about? It's do you leave or don't you leave? Do you repeal the 72 Act or don't you? And the reality is that actually some people are putting their heads in the sand over this, and they think that somehow there's some kind of political fix, or that the Prime Minister herself can be put in a position where she herself will somehow or other get through all this. It's impossible to get this withdrawal agreement through the House of Commons.
It's not impossible if a third of the party who didn't support her yesterday support their Prime Minister. The ERG doesn't have a leader.
No, it's not about the ERG. It's about the question of whether or not the withdrawal agreement itself contradicts the Withdrawal Act, which says that we repeal the 72 Act from the 29th of March. It's as simple as that. And the reality is that they can't do that and they won't do it. So people are just completely missing the wood for the trees.
It isn't the point that a lot of people in the country will say, I voted for Brexit. I think Theresa May is delivering it. It's not a Brexit that's going to make everybody happy, but it's a Brexit that will make a lot of people happy. She's delivering on what we voted for. Just let her get on with it and stop putting obstacles in her way.
At the moment, you're discussing with me quite properly the status of the Conservative Party in this.
Indeed.
Can I
but the Conservative Party represent their constituents, don't they?
Yes, and actually, do you know something? We had a manifesto in 2017. And that said no single market, no customs union. It also said we were going to accept and put through the Withdrawal Act, which was to leave the European Union. So the Conservative Party itself has absolutely categorically said that it wants the Withdrawal Act to go through, and that it wants to repeal the 72 Act, and that it doesn't want to be in the single market, and it doesn't want to be in the customs union. I mean, this thing is so simple and so straightforward, and a bit of honesty about all this is really required, and people really need to get their heads around that.
One final quick question: if it wasn't May taking us through that, who do you think should take us through these negotiations?
Well, I'm saying, I sort of hope somehow that the light will dawn on the Prime Minister and on those who are advising her the impossible situation that has been created by intransigence. My committee in March this year said these negotiations were not sufficiently robust. We were giving in, we were supplicating the EU, we were giving in to their guidelines. And the reality is that that's what's been going on the whole time. I had to summons Oliver Robbins to appear in front of my committee because she and he would not appear in front, he wouldn't appear in front of my committee. We know the reality is that there have been breaches of collective responsibility. Checkers took place because the cabinet, when the cabinet was bounced, they came up with a new plan that nobody knew even existed. And the reality is the cabinet was bounced on that day, and a lot of these problems go back to that, because I was 100% behind the government and the Prime Minister and working with all the ministers to get that Withdrawal Act through. We did it, and now it looks as if they're trying to play games with it.
OK, we're going to leave it there because
yes,
of time.
Very
So,
nice
thank you very much.